Well, Nebraska went 3-9 last season. Scott Frost's fourth straight losing season in his 4 years at Nebraska, and the worst season at Nebraska since 1957, at least in terms of overall percentage, with the 3-9. They brought him in at the end of the year, sort of gave him the come to Jesus meeting. He fired pretty much his entire coaching staff. They reworked his contract and restructured his buyout, meaning it's basically put up or get out time for Scott Frost in 2022. Is he going to survive? Well, we're going to start to find out tomorrow when Nebraska kicks off the 2022 football season at 12:30, part of the Week 0 weekend that starts tomorrow, against Northwestern. So they start off just like they did last year with a division opponent. Last year they started off with Illinois. This year they start off with Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland. Huh? So in today's video, we're going to talk about Nebraska. We're going to talk about their offense, the defense, the changes made to the coaching staff. Then I'm going to put their schedule up on the screen. We're going to go through it game by game, and I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single one. Let's go. Oh, yeah, good morning. That is UncleLou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, UncleLou. And guess what? I'm live for you on LouTube today. That's right. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and believe it or not, some of them are watchable. I don't know about this one. You can let me know in the comments down below when you get on watching what you thought about this video. Let me know where I was right and where I was wrong. But we are going to do Nebraska today. Let's get right to it. Make sure you check out yesterday's video if you hadn't already. I did the Georgia Bulldogs version of this video yesterday, and if you check the description of that video, there's a chance for some free money in there. Click back one video, check out the description, click the link. All right, let's start with Scott Frost. Been there 4 years, had the perfect season, perfect season at Central Florida in 2017, ending with a Peach Bowl victory over Auburn, finished 4th or 5th in the country, whatever it was. Played at Nebraska, right? So Nebraska gives him the call, brings him into Lincoln. He becomes the head coach. Everybody was excited, and he's done nothing but crap to bed since then. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat how bad Scott Frost has been at Nebraska. 4 years, not a single winning record. Stuck with Adrian Martinez way too long. He's finally gone now. More on that when we talk about the offense. He's not the only thing gone from the offense, though. All but one offensive coach from last year's Nebraska staff is gone. I think it's a tight ends coach or something they kept. Everybody else is brand new. Another change, Scott Frost has been not only head coach, but offensive coordinator in his time at Nebraska. Now he's got a designated offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, and they also finally hired a special teams coach, which is something they didn't have before. So a lot of turnover on the staff at Nebraska. Let's talk about that offense. You might be surprised to know that Nebraska outrushed, outpassed, and outscored their opponents last season, total for the season. But, of course, somehow finished 3-9. Now, I'm sure you know the story. 8 of those 9 losses were by 1 score or less. The 9th loss was only by 9 points, and that was to Ohio State. So, yes, a lot of close losses. They got to figure out a way to start turning those close losses into close wins, right? Some of that's going to fall on the offense, some on the defense, some on the coaching staff. We'll start with quarterback. Getting rid of Adrian Martinez, in my opinion, is addition by subtraction. I just don't think the guy ever got any better the entire time he was in college. In fact, his best year was probably his freshman year. He seemed to stay hurt a lot after that and just never really seemed to live up to the potential. Now, I don't know who you want to blame for that. Maybe the kid just didn't have it. Maybe that's an indication that Scott Frost and that offensive staff did a poor job of developing him. I don't know, but he has transferred out, and Casey Thompson has transferred in at quarterback, and he'll be the starting quarterback for Nebraska in 2022. He comes from Texas, started, I think, all but the first game of the season last year. If I remember right, Hudson Card, I think, started the first game of the year at Texas, got benched. Casey Thompson came in, and it was his show the rest of the way. And, yeah, I know Texas wasn't very good, and I'm not trying to tell you their offense was perfect, but most of Texas' problems last year were defensive. They had the lead in the majority of the games they lost last year. They had the lead at halftime. They had a lead over Oklahoma at halftime. They had a lead over Baylor at halftime. They had a lead over Oklahoma State at halftime. The defense was really what let Texas down last year. The offense didn't play great either down the stretch of those games when it mattered most. But in general, it was mostly a defensive problem at Texas. That doesn't mean that Casey Thompson is going to come in and save the day at Nebraska and they're going to go 12-0 and win the Big Ten or anything like that. But I do think this is a huge upgrade at the quarterback position versus anything Scott Frost has had at Nebraska in his time there, which has been just Adrian Martinez. I'll take Casey Thompson over Adrian Martinez any day. Offensive line goes, your center, which is probably your best offensive lineman list last year, decided to leave early, so he's gone off to the NFL. Your 2 tackles, your 2 starting tackles this year missed a lot of time in the spring with injury. So another issue with Nebraska is depth and health. They have to stay healthy. They're not as talented overall as the upper echelon teams of the Big Ten, and if they start to experience injuries in key positions, whether it be offensive or defensive, they just don't have the depth behind that, especially to sort of just fill in and keep things rolling. I think they'll be okay at one of the guard positions. I guess figure out what they're going to do at the right guard, but they can get those 2 tackles healthy and find a replacement for the center. I think the offensive line will be okay. At wide receiver, the leading returning receiver from last year, 26 catches, 380 yards, Omar Manning, he's back, had a couple of touchdowns. He's got to play better. Alante Brown is back, who played a little bit last year. Nebraska's going to need some people to step up at the wide receiver position. Texas has a better group of wide receivers than Nebraska had. That's just a fact. So whatever you think about Casey Thompson, he's going to need some help at that wide receiver position. Tight end is another position where you dealt with some injuries in the spring, and so some guys missed some key time. And, of course, losing Austin Allen to the NFL off last year's team didn't help. Travis Vokalek, I think is his name. He'll be your starting tight end. He's going to have to play better, and you're going to have to get some production out of him. Finally, over to the running back position, Ramir Johnson comes back from last year. A good, not great running back. Doesn't mean he couldn't have a great year this year. A lot of that's going to depend on that offensive line and if it can stay healthy. But he did average 4.4 yards per carry last year. Just not elite, but it's nothing to sneeze at either. I mean, most people would be happy with 4.5 yards every time you hand your running back the ball. So that's a look at Nebraska's offense. Is it going to be good enough to get them over the hump? 6, 7 wins? I mean, let's be real. If they don't make a bowl game, there's no question or doubt about it, right? Scott Frost is gone. The only question is how many games over 6 does he need to win to make sure he keeps his job? Let's take a look at the defense and see if we can figure it out. All right, now there's some good news with the defense. 4 out of your top 5 tacklers from last season returned. That's good news. The bad news, you only returned 1 player who started every single game last year. Again, injuries were a part of the defense last year, forcing Nebraska to play a lot of different players. You're going to have to pretty much rebuild your defensive line completely. Your secondary, which was the strength of your team last year, only has 2 starters returning. So it's sort of a mixed bag defensively. It's nice to have 4 of your top 5 returning tacklers back. They've got to stay healthy, and you're going to have to find some answers at the defensive line or the secondary. You can afford to have a weakness at one or the other, right? If you've got sort of a subpar defensive line that has a hard time pressuring the QB, an elite secondary can help make up for that by locking down the receivers. If you've got issues in the secondary, then a really good pass rush can help cover that up. One of these 2 position groups, either the defensive line or the secondary, is going to have to play way out over their skis and above their potential, really, for Nebraska to get to the 8-9 win mark. Let's put their schedule up on the screen, go through it game by game, and see what they can do. All right, Nebraska starts things off just like they did last year in week 0 with a conference opponent. Last year it was Illinois. Nebraska lost that game, and it was sort of an indication of how the rest of the season was going to go for Nebraska. It was a close loss to really an inferior team, maybe a sort of about equal team that Nebraska had opportunities to win and probably should have won, but instead found a way to lose. You can't start this season off this way. I think there's a few games on this schedule that are like key games for Nebraska. This is one of them. More than anything else, Nebraska needs some confidence. When Nebraska gets into the 4th quarter of these close games, they're used to doing nothing but losing. They need to reverse that mindset and that psychology. They've got to beat Northwestern. Northwestern is a good team in most years, right? Every once in a while, they exceed good, and they're maybe really good, 10 wins, win the division, whatever. Every once in a while, they're less than good, 5, 6, 7 wins, whatever. Generally, they're a pretty good team. The point is, if Nebraska wants to get where they want to go, they have to be beating the Northwesterns of the world. I'm pretty confident in Nebraska winning this game. If this game was played anywhere else other than Ireland, I'd be more confident in it. In fact, I'd rather, if this game was at Northwestern, I would be more confident in Nebraska winning than it is in Ireland. And the reason is you don't really know how these teams are going to respond to this kind of travel. It's not just leaving the day before, going a couple of time zones over and playing a game, right? They left Monday of this week, so they've been in Ireland all week. Are they treating it like a vacation, or are they treating it like a game week? You got a lot of kids that have never been on a plane before. You got a lot of kids that have never been out of the state, never mind the country, right? There's just a lot going on when you're traveling like that, and so you don't know, and that goes for Northwestern as well. You just don't really know how these teams are going to handle that. With that being said, I still think Nebraska gets off on the right foot, finds a way to get it done. They're a 13-point favorite in this game. I think they should win this game by more than 13. I like Casey Thompson at quarterback. I think he's going to be the difference maker for Nebraska in a lot of these games that last year were close losses. Nebraska gets to win over Northwestern. They're 1-0. Then you got a couple of games that you should be able to cruise through. North Dakota and Georgia Southern. Look, I live in Georgia. It wouldn't hurt my feelings to see Georgia Southern do well, and they've done well in the past, particularly when they were what we used to call 1AA, won some national championships and things like that. But they're up into the group of 5 now, and they've just really struggled lately. So if you're a Nebraska fan and you're watching this, you don't know a whole lot about Georgia Southern, don't worry. They're not very good. You should be extremely alarmed if you can't run them off the field. You should be 3-0 after your first 3 weeks of the season. And then we get to the Oklahoma game. And even though this isn't a conference game, this is one of the biggest games of the season. Oklahoma's ranked in the top 10 in the preseason AP poll. I think they're at number 9, right? Everybody's got them in their top 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. This is the first opportunity for Nebraska to make a real statement game. This, again, is a game that maybe Nebraska could have and should have won last year. And instead of doing that, they found a way to lose it. They've got to get over this hump. It starts with the Northwestern game. It sort of builds to this Oklahoma game, right? I'm on the fence about Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's a pretty talented team, but they've got a brand new coaching staff with a guy that's never coached a game before. I've got a lot of questions about him on the defensive side of the ball. I know Brent Venables is a defensive genius. He hasn't anywhere near the talent in Oklahoma to work with that he did coming out of Clemson, right? They bring a quarterback in from the group of 5. It's going to be interesting to see sort of the Casey Thompson versus Dylan Gabriel battle that we could see in this game here. I've already done an Oklahoma version of this video that you're watching, so if you've seen that video, you know which way I go here. I think Nebraska shocks a lot of people and beats Oklahoma in week 4. Nebraska is 4-0, and Scott Frost is well on his way to being employed in 2023. Then you get a bye week. You get 2 bye weeks because you played in week 0. And it's always good to get extra bye weeks, particularly for Nebraska. To get a bye week if they beat Oklahoma, I think is huge. Because the celebration will be out of this world in Lincoln, Nebraska if Oklahoma actually gets that done and cruises into their first bye week 4-0. I think it's good that they have a bye week to kind of, bring everybody back down to earth and try to remember, hey, this is great, but we got 8 games left to play, right? So a good time early in the season for a bye week because of where it comes on the schedule. You come out of that and you got a whole series of conference games with one more bye week mixed in to run out your season. October 1st, you host Indiana. They were the worst team in the Big Ten last year, not Nebraska. I think they all had the same record. Nebraska was clearly a better team than Indiana. If you watched Indiana and Nebraska play over multiple weeks last year, it was pretty obvious to see how bad Indiana was. I think Nebraska will get this win. It's at home. Again, you're coming off a bye week, an extra week to prepare, and to come back down from what could be the biggest win at Nebraska in a lot of people's lifetime. Sorry about that. That went over Oklahoma. And you're going to beat Indiana. You remain somehow undefeated. You then go on the road and play Rutgers, and on the road and play Purdue, and this is where it starts to get tricky. I think Purdue is the better of these 2 teams here, but you have to play them both on the road, and Rutgers has a coach that knows what he's doing. He was at Rutgers, a decade, 15 years ago, whatever it was now, and had them winning 10 games a year. Hasn't got them back to that point yet, but you do sort of get the feeling when it comes to Rutgers that they're getting to the point now where they're due to start pulling off some of these wins. I think this is Nebraska's slip-up game. I do think Nebraska's a better team than Rutgers. Obviously, I have you beating Oklahoma and starting the season 5-0 or whatever it is. So, if Nebraska and Rutgers played 100 times, Nebraska would probably beat them more often than not, but they don't play 100 times. I think sort of the media attention and everything that starts to build around Nebraska after they beat Oklahoma kind of catches up with them here on the road. I think you take a loss at Rutgers. I think you turn right around after that and lose to Purdue. Back-to-back losses. Not what Nebraska fans want to hear. Now, Purdue, I think, is going to be a pretty decent team and could actually compete possibly to win the Big Ten West. So could Nebraska. It's going to come down to a few key games as far as who wins the West, I think. Clearly, I could be wrong here. I don't have a crystal ball. This is just my best guesstimate of what's going to happen. When I get to the end of the schedule here, I'll sort of give you some more insight on how I arrived at some of these destinations. But I do think Nebraska drops these 2 road games back-to-back. You're 5-2. But the sky's not falling and the world has not come to an end. You then have your second bye week, again, because you played in week 0, 2 bye weeks. You come out of that, you play Illinois. I think you get the win against Illinois. Again, coming out of a bye week, extra week to prepare, middle of the season, extra week of healing time, and for some of these guys to get better that maybe were hurt or banged up earlier in the season. I think you get the win over Illinois. Same thing against Minnesota. Minnesota's a pretty good team. I mean, I think Minnesota's better than Rutgers, right? But you get Minnesota at home. I think you get the win over Minnesota. So far, so good. You're bowl eligible already, right? You then go on the road at Michigan, home against Wisconsin, on the road at Iowa. I don't know if you can find a tougher three-game stretch for any Big Ten team this season than this three-game stretch right here. At Michigan is a top 5 team in a lot of places, top 10 no matter where you look. Iowa, they're not ranked in the preseason, but you're in the Big Ten West. I don't need to tell you about Iowa. They're going to play really good defense. They're going to slow you down. You have to play them there. They sort of force you to play their version of football, well, kind of old school, pound the ball, slow things down. They like to win off of defense and turnovers and sort of a slow offensive style, big lines of scrimmage. Wisconsin is the team, I think, of these three that's going to have the down year again. I've done a Wisconsin version of this video as well, so if you've seen it, you already know. I actually think you beat Wisconsin. For one, you get them at home. That's a clear advantage, right? You don't have to go play at Madison. And I just don't think Graham Mertz is very good. Now, it's possible they've made a change at quarterback by this point in the season, but that's impossible to predict now in the preseason as I'm doing these prediction videos. I just think Nebraska's a better team than Wisconsin, honestly, and I think you get the win. I do think you lose on the road at Michigan and on the road at Iowa for a total of 4 losses, making Nebraska 8-4 for 2022. Now, I don't know what Nebraska fans are going to think about that. I'll be honest, because I don't interact with a lot of Nebraska fans on a regular basis. So I don't know if the majority of Nebraska fans are thinking 9-10 wins and win the Big Ten West. I don't know if the majority of Nebraska fans are crossing their fingers and saying, please let us win 6 games so we can make a bowl game. I don't know. I think Nebraska probably comes down somewhere in the middle there. When I looked at this schedule, the most obvious record to me was 8-4, right? Now, clearly, if you're just going off, well, we're going to lose to the teams that are better than us, and we're going to beat the teams that we're better than them, well, then you'll beat Rutgers and lose to Oklahoma, right? And clearly that could happen. The good news is, if you do lose to Oklahoma in week 4, but then turn around and win that game at Rutgers, you still will end up where I have you at the 8-4, which is going to be a great season considering where Nebraska has come from the last really 10 to 15 years, right? Going back a couple of coaches now, but particularly with Scott Frost. And I think an 8-4 season would be good enough for Scott Frost to probably keep his job. That's something else I'd be interested to hear from Nebraska fans about. Is there a minimum number of games for you over and above the 6-win mark? Because I think everyone agrees if Nebraska doesn't get to 6 wins, Scott Frost is gone. I think everyone knows that. Is there a number higher than that he has to get to, though? I can't imagine Nebraska firing Scott Frost if he goes 8-4. I think 7-5 is the limbo area. 6-6, 7-5, I think is kind of limbo. Maybe then you look at, well, who did he lose to? Who did he beat? And you have a tough decision to make. 5-7, he's gone, I think. 8-4, he definitely comes back. It's the 6-6, 7-5 scenario that I'm sort of on the fence about in terms of what would happen with Scott Frost. So if you're a Nebraska fan watching this video, first of all, let me know where I'm wrong down in the comments section. Feel free to let me know where I'm wrong. Let me know what you think the record's going to be, and not just what the record is, but who you think they're going to lose to. And then let me know about Scott Frost. What's the magic number for you? How many games does he need to win to keep his job if you were in charge, right? Nebraska was a 3-9 team last year. I've been saying all offseason, I think Nebraska is going to be one of the most improved teams in 2022 in terms of record, right? Going from 3 to 8 wins would be a +5 increase. That could very well be the biggest increase in college football in 2022. I also think it's possible Nebraska triples their wins and goes 9-3. If you beat Oklahoma and Rutgers and only lose 3, let's say you lose to Iowa, Michigan, and Purdue. And it's possible, 9-3, right? And then you get the one big win over Oklahoma. Or maybe you lose to Oklahoma, but you beat Michigan, right? I see a path to 9-3, but it involves Nebraska really everything going their way in those key games, right? In some of those toughest games. 8-4 is where I landed. Again, let me know down below what you think. I really appreciate you watching, and have a good morning.